Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 235, our opening episode of 2019. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing, Daniel from not Three Kings, what I'm saying, Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, gents?
Good evening.
Hello.
Normally we would have Gail from Communities Digital News on as a regular. Unfortunately, she has some business to take care of, and she gets paid for that. So my thing is, go make your money, Gail. Go make your money. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, as I say to begin every broadcast, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. And the motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. And let me say beforehand that I am a Clemson Tiger fan, and because of that, we're recording this episode on the night of the national championship game with Alabama, so I may be distracted from time to time. Bama leading Clemson 16-14 right now. Really good game. So let's get things kicked off by really going back to the end of 2018, particularly in Tokyo and Macau. Let's start in Macau first. Very good fight to end the year as Donnie Nietes fighting Kazuto Ioka, vacant WBO 115-pound belt. Nietes won by split decision. I'll go to you, Daniel, and then you can follow up, Jacob. Your impressions of the fight. For me, I'm watching the fight, and even a week later, I know Nietes got the decision, but I'm still having difficulty deciding who won as I watched the fight. I watched it twice now. I thought the fight was pretty much even. Very good bout. High-level action, high-level skill throughout. I've had people say publicly or respond to me that they felt Nietes won pretty clearly, close, but pretty clearly. Do you feel the same? Do you think the fight was close? Again, your overall impressions of what went down in Macau.
It was a tale of two fights, actually. Because in the beginning, Kazuto was really trying to make it a fight on the inside, get up close, and smother Nietes' punches while landing body shots of his own. But as the fight wore on, you saw Nietes measure the distance and be a lot more effective outside at good range and avoiding Kazuto from getting inside, even though Kazuto from time to time was able to do that. As far as the scores, that one scorecard that pretty much I think had it 10-2 for Nietes, I vehemently disagree with that. You can make a case for the 116-112 because of how well Nietes fought, even when, like I said, when Kazuto was getting inside and smothering the punches. But the problem when it comes to it is, when in this fight is, those first half round for the fight, both guys did an effective job of smothering each other's offenses. So it makes it very difficult to gauge who was winning. It wasn't until Nietes, I think probably from round 5 on, figured out the distance, figured out how he can hit the jab and then land his counters without having Kazuto land on him as much. It wasn't until then when you started noticing who was more effective as far as aggression, as far as defense. The main thing you probably have to look forward to in this fight is, and it's something that I said when we previewed this, I really hoped and I really regret that this fight didn't happen 2 or 3 years ago. Because even though they did really, really well, even though they both had a good ebb and flow throughout, we know that the Donnie Nietes and the Kazuto Ioka 2 or 3 years ago would have given a lot more of a fight in that. And we got a pretty good fight in this stage. Like I said, I'm glad that Nietes won. I feel he did win. 8-4 seems to be like a reasonable scorecard to me. Anything more than that, that's not really a good case, but you can do 8-4, 7-5. I tend to agree more with 8-4 though.
your reaction to the fight, Jacob?
I thought it was a really excellent fight, actually. A lot of action, a lot of back and forth, and I think Daniel's observations were right on. I think early on in the fight, Ioka just he seemed to there's a lot of inside fighting, and he was doing pretty well. And then I think Nietes started to get his measure his distance. And was able to start to kind of pull away, but Ioka made it still close. Like, I agree. I don't think that one card was a 118, 110. I don't think that's a very good card. I think it was a lot closer than that, but I still think that Nietes won. I think later on in the fight, he just seemed to was able to measure and kind of settle down and get into his rhythm, and was able to be the more effective, in the round. So I definitely think that he deserves to win that fight. But it was an exciting, good back and forth fight. I wouldn't mind if, even if they ran it back again. It was that good. So, it was a nice little way to end the new year.
I'm going back to you, Jacob, and kind of ask my question in reaction to the final thing you just said. Let's talk what could be up next for Nietes and Ioka. Do you think we will see them run it back, as you said, or Nietes, his camp especially, has talked about him wanting to fight a unification bout, and it seems to be their target seems to be Rung Vasai, Sri Sakai. Sri Sakai Sor Rung Vasai. I'm sorry. Sri Sakai Sor Rung Vasai, WBC champion. Well, a lot of people feel is the best in the division. Sri Sakai is, from what you're hearing in boxing circles, is trying to make a unification bout himself against IBF champion Jerwan Kanyas, while Nietes, of course, he has scheduled technically to fight a mandatory contender between an elimination bout between Polite and I forgot the guy Polite is fighting. They're fighting in January. So coming off of what we just saw, career best win for Nietes, career defining win for Nietes, arguably no argue to it, the best win of his career. Where do you think he will go? And you can follow up and respond as well, Daniel.
I think you speaking about the Rung Vasai fight, I think he is going to try to get that Nghae's fight. They'll try to do that, so that'll basically kind of bind him up for the time being, if they're able to make that fight. And I think that's a good move for Rung Vasai's camp. I'm not sure if he's going to want to run this back. I think another interesting fight potentially is maybe Estrada, because Estrada is trying to get a fight with Rung Vasai. He's trying to get another chance, another crack at that, and I believe he's the number one contender. So I think that could be a good fight. It's a dangerous fight because Estrada is good, but I think they were. Ioka and Nietes were on the undercard of the Estrada Superfly 3 card last year. So, I think it's an exciting division. There's a bunch of fights they can make. But if I was him, I wouldn't wait around Nietes. He's not, he's not a young spring chicken.
36.
Yeah. So, he's been around for a while. So, I don't know. Maybe he can try to steal that Nkaha's fight, because I think Nkaha's is the weakest link in that crowd, in my opinion. So, if I was any of those fighters, I'd be trying to get that fight. But the Estrada, I think the Estrada fight would be a good substitute while he's waiting for Rung Vasai.
Your thoughts, Daniel, in terms of the future for Nietes, and speak on the possible future for Ioka. He kind of gambled a bit moving up to 115, seeking this big fight when he didn't necessarily need it. So he kind of went for greatness. He didn't get it. Where does he go as well?
Because a lot of the circumstances that Jacob mentioned, I see them doing a rematch. But it has to be somewhere in the States because the one particular scorecard that came out, the 118, 110, let the bad taste in people's mind, especially if you're a Japanese fan and realizing that you were technically in the Chinese territory. So I can see them running back, but in a neutral area. Because obviously Rumvasai is going to be tied up with Arcanius. And Estrada was seemingly a good fight. He himself is gunning for Rumvasai. So he may actually wait until Rumvasai gets free for him to make his claim. But there are other fights that can be made as well. You can do Cuadras. You can do either one of the Arroyo brothers. So there are fights available for both of them.
Gonzalez, too. We got Chocolatito still there.
I would probably want to give Chocolatito a couple of more fights before I throw him in with either Nietes or Kazuto. The problem is, that's why I feel like they're both going to run into each other again, because it wasn't like a lapse. Despite the scorecards, it wasn't a lopsided fight. It's a very good fight. There's like I said, there's a couple of rounds you can argue where maybe this fight turns out to be a draw. So I would say run it back, but find a place where you can run it back, and it'll be more neutral. Maybe someplace on the East Coast, or maybe someplace like in Texas, like someplace that you're gonna get into it. But the focus, particularly when it comes to Nietes, like you mentioned, he's 36 years old. Like I said, he's been one of the best Filipino fighters of the generation, and unfortunately, he just had to be fighting at the same time as their best fighter in the generation, of Manny. So he needs to get into it, and he also needs to get his profile up. So I could see him doing the fight in the States, and Kazuto's earned it. Like I said, Kazuto's earned the fact that he could do this division. He proved it that he could hang around this division. It wasn't like he got knocked out. And he showed that he can really counter well in the fight with Arroyo. So I wouldn't mind him running it back. I want to remember there's a lot of time period where there's a lot of cards that can be made, and yeah, Superfly doesn't technically have a home at the moment, but you never know. You never know. You might have Eddie Hearn make a call. You might have Bob make a call. So that avenue is still open.
I got to go back to you, Daniel, with this next fight, because I know this is one of your favorite fighters.
Man.
One Hekkie Budler, who defended his junior flyweight belt. I want to say WBA version against former IBF strawweight champion HIroto Kyoguchi. And I had a feeling that Kyoguchi was going to give Budler a really, really good fight. It could very well beat him well. That turned out to be the case. Not only did he beat Kyoguchi, he stopped him as Butler's corner decided not to bring his charge out for the 11th round. Kind of went the way I anticipated. Kyoguchi, to me, is a better fighter than Budler beat Toguchi for the titles last year. Though he's moving up in a way, I've felt that Kyoguchi is the bigger, stronger, more physically imposing fighter, more powerful guy, and he could do a little bit more than Toguchi did against Budler. Budler didn't move normally like we're used to seeing him move, but I just don't think it mattered because Kyoguchi, a tough, strong guy who knows how to cut off the ring, can really, really hit. And it became a case where Budler fought hard, where Kyoguchi, from a physical standpoint, was just a little bit too much and just slowly but surely overwhelmed him. It was kind of like slow death, Daniel.
Yep, it was, and that's what I said. This is one of the fights that always makes me say, when it comes to Budler, he is a natural strawweight. Unfortunately, he can't make money as strawweight, so he has to always try to make these jumps to junior flyweight, and he always winds up being the smaller guy. In this case, Kyoguchi, the kid really looked like he could have been a super flyweight in that ring against Budler. And what was interesting to me was he was starting digging Budler to the body early on. And it paid dividends, even though Budler was landing combinations throughout the fight.
He couldn't hurt him.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. Like, as many combinations he threw, as much as punches that he could throw that scored, it didn't do nothing to Kyoguchi. And Kyoguchi's punches slowly over time, particularly the body shots, affected him and slowed him down and caused Budler to become a lot more stationary, which is something you really can't do against a guy who is bigger, faster, and stronger than you. And I'm glad that his corner did the right thing, though. Like, yes, I understand it was between the 11th and the 12th round, but at a certain point, you have to save the fighter from themselves. And that was a good saving point. Now, as far as Kyoguchi, like, I have to give hats off to him. He was able to adjust from Budler's combinations, readjust the distance, and then, like I said, started digging to the body early and into the mid rounds, and it paid dividends at the end. Because even though the knockdowns didn't happen as much, you saw how stationary Budler got. You saw how slower the combinations he was throwing got. And by the 11th round, it started becoming target practice. And luckily, that's when I said, where I commend Butler's corner to say, no, that's enough. Like, you cannot beat this man. We're not sending you again to get whipped by this man, especially considering probably the next fight we're going to talk about. I'm glad they did it, but it just highlights the career of Hekkie Budler in a nutshell. Like, at strawweight, he is a great fighter. He can really handle those guys, and he can win on boxing ability and combinations. But because he can't make money as a strawweight, he always has to make these occasional jumps to junior flyweight. And he'll win a few times, but then he runs into a situation like this where he's facing a guy who is just bigger. And it ultimately shows that, yeah, you're in the smallest weight class, but that's the right weight class for you.
I'm sorry. Again, like I said, I would be distracted. Clemson just scored again. If you saw the fight, Jacob, your reaction to what you just saw, is it just a case of size mattering here? My Tigers are leading Bama 28-16. Go ahead, Jacob. Go ahead. I'm pumped right now. I'm pumped.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, Bama had that nice stop when Clemson had a nice stop when they're on the 1 yard line, and they only got a field goal out of it. So go Clemson. But this fight, I think you guys pretty much said it all. I think size had a lot to do with it. He hit him with a hellacious body shot that really hurt Budler, and he turned his back, like it was that hard. And so he started jumping on him. So, it just didn't seem like anything Budler was throwing was really doing anything to Kyoguchi. So, it has to do a lot with the size, and if he's not hurting him, and Kyoguchi's not respecting Budler in a sense of power, and he was kind of like sitting, just kind of waiting to pounce on him, cutting off the ring, and hands held high, and then he would kind of strike on him, and so it ended up just being a pretty much like a systematic, victory for Kyoguchi. So, it's unfortunate for Budler, like Daniel said. He can't really. There's nothing for him. He's kind of forced to move up. So, it's kind of victim of circumstance. But yeah, I mean, good win for Kyoguchi.
I'm not going to talk about the other fight on that card, Mutalane, because bit pressed for time here. But I want to move on to Japan. As we all know in boxing circles, particularly hardcore boxing circles, the country of Japan usually ends the year by having a multi-world title fight card to close out the year. It was the same case this year. Masayuki Ito, who scored a surprise win here in the States to win the 130-pound title WBO version, had his first title defense against a Russian fighter by the name of Chuprakov. And going in, previewing it last week, Jacob, I just felt from watching video of Chuprakov, I'm wondering, okay, he's number one contender. But based on the video I saw of him, my question was how? Because in watching this, yeah, he's tough, but I just didn't see anything from a skill set wise, a power perspective wise, a physical strength perspective that would concern Ito at all. And to prove that bait in the fight, as Ito stopped him in the 7th round, beat him up. Are we underestimating how good Ito is, given that he just basically splashed on the scene?
I don't think we're underestimating him.
No, what I mean by that is junior lightweight division is hot. Folks talk about Tevin Farmer. Folks talk about Burchell. Folks talk about Tank Davis, but you don't hear as much discussion about Ito in terms of comparing him with the kind of, if you want to call, elite fighters at junior lightweight.
I think a lot of that has to do with, and I don't know why this is, but it seems like Japan has their, over there, they, when they have these fighters that are good, but they just fight strictly in Japan, they kind of get lost in the shuffle of the fighters, like whether it's a Mexican fighter or whatever that's actually doing its fighting here in the States, or at least somewhere on this time zones. So they get exposure. So again, he got exposure by winning the belt in his first fight in America, right? So, so now he's kind of on the radar. But I actually put this on I'd actually love to see an Ito versus Burchelt fight. That was my number 10, fights I'd want to see this year in 2019. But to speak on the fight itself, Chuprakov, I don't think he's that good of a fighter at all.
No,
he is like I don't know. His defense is terrible. I mean, if you look at his fights and just like who he's fought, he isn't really. I don't know. He's not a world beater. I think Ito knew. In this fight, it was kind of an ugly fight. Like Chuprakov was holding a lot and doing a lot of grappling and wrestling and like tying up the arms. Once Ito was able to get some distance on him, he started tagging him, and he was just and Chuprakov doesn't sit down on his punches or anything, so he kind of has like I don't know. He has a lazy style, and so I think Ito basically recognized that this guy was going to have nothing for him, and then just started taking him apart, and eventually stopped them. Or I think the corner stopped it, in the 7th round. But not good showcase for Ito, but not really like I would say a quality test. Or that's not going to get him ready for some of the fighters like Burchelt or the other fighters you mentioned. So, hopefully he can get back to the States though, and get some more exposure. Cause, I know we hate it, but the hardcores, they'll watch fights no matter where they're at, whether it's in the Eastern Bloc or Macau or Japan or whatever. But like for like casuals, I mean, unfortunately, if it's like not in maybe like in the UK or in America, I mean, a lot of these guys don't really get that exposure. So, hopefully he can get with someone that can, offer him some, not only some matchups, but some exposure like on an ESPN or a DAZN or something like that, like get on an undercard, like a co-main or something like that, and then, get some exposure, kind of like how the women got exposure, a lot more exposure this year. I mean, they're getting a lot closer to getting those, they did do a main event fight, but like, getting not on the deep undercards, but like on the TV undercards so that you can, people will see you.
All right, as Mike watches Clemson, this was a showcase fight, and I'll be a lot more blunt when it comes to the defense, Jacob. That guy made Provodnikov's defense look like Sweet Pea. Because that guy literally had nothing. He just came forward, he headbutted, and just let Ito adjust on the fly. Now, we have to remember thing about Ito. This is a guy that has a similar profile to Tevin Farmer. And the fact that they don't have...
I'm sorry, y'all. My scroll froze on. My screen froze on me, but proceed to go ahead. I'm back.
No problem. Like I said, I mentioned, like we have to look at Ito, like I said, in the same way that we look at Farmer, because they don't have much of a natural pedigree. In Ito's case, he has none. And we also have to mention, remember, he has the language gap to go over because his trainer is Rudy Hernandez. Like they mentioned it in the ESPN broadcast. Ito speaks Japanese and Hernandez speaks Spanish. So it's very, very hard to teach the language barrier, but they were able to do it.
Tomato.
Yep. And they said that boxing is a universal language. And it's very true. Now, the best part about this, though, when it comes into it is because this was more of a showcase for Ito, like I said, that the poor guy's defense was anything but. I will have to say, I think it gave Mike nightmares because they saw his favorite referee there.
Yeah. One Mr. Cole.
Yep,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now, but I do like the fact that his opponent's corner did the right thing. Like at the end of that seventh round, not the end of the seventh round, near the end of the seventh round, like I said, just like this fight between Kyoguchi and Budler, it became target practice. Ito was just landing his combination, landing his right hand at will. So, at that point, like that corner saw enough. Like I said, like no, we can't do it. Like there's no way we're gonna beat this guy. Like we are not ready, and stop the fight. And now with unifications, I wouldn't mind. Like I said, I wouldn't mind having him and Farmer because they technically have a little bit of a similar story, similar road, and it'd be interesting to see which one can actually do the other because Ito can do distance really, really well. But Farmer is starting to become a better inside fighter. So I'd love to see that. Burchard, obviously, it's a good one to have. Machado is a good one to have. So there's a lot of fights for Ito to have. But remember, he is this good with no amateur experience whatsoever. He is this good already.
Okay. On ESPN Plus. The probability we'll see Ito fight more often. Do this. Okay.
At least you guys have a little bit of a lead. I didn't hear. Was there a question, Mike?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. You were cutting out
Can y'all
in
hear
and
me?
out a little bit. Yeah, I can hear
Okay,
you.
what I was saying was this fight was aired, I believe, on the ESPN Plus app. The probability of him fighting going to 2019.
You kind of cut out for me, but probability of him fighting on ESPN Plus again?
Or in the States in general. In the States.
I think it's high. I mean, he came here and he did well. So I mean, there's no reason why he can't come here again and be on a bunch of the different cards that they're going to have on ESPN Plus.
Oh, and
your thoughts on
let's
that,
not
Daniel?
forget. No. Oh, no, you're going to see him in the States again. Obviously, because, yes, he fought in Japan, but he's now based in Southern California. So he's made a similar move like to what Kazuto did. So, I said they're both in Southern California because that way he can spend full time with Rudy Fernandez, with his trainer. So, it makes him very, very accessible. There's no real, as far as real barrier anymore when it comes into it. So you definitely going to see, again, the issue is going to be which network is going to be in, because obviously ESPN Plus can do some fights, but if you want to do unifications, Farmer looks to be with DAZN. We know Machado through their association with Golden Boy is with DAZN. And if you really want to look into Tank, we know it's a PBC. So there are possibilities, and all of them are stateside.
Before we move on to talk about the news, you want to talk a little bit about Kenshiro Daniel, who fought on the undercard of this Ito Chuprakov card. Excuse me.
That's the one fight I missed. The whole thing of where I was sick. That's the one fight I missed. I do apologize for that. I have to look that one up.
No problem. Oh, no problem. Let's move on to the news then. I wrote about this news. I wrote about this yesterday for Three Kings Boxing. Hello, everyone. This is Michael, host of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. You're listening to episode 235. Episode 235 was recorded Monday, January 7th. Unfortunately, at this portion of the live recording, had some technical issues on my end, had to stop the recording. We eventually came back and got the rest of the episode finished. But yeah, at this point, I want to apologize. Technical issues on my end. Had to stop things and restart things, but we eventually got the entire show finished. So yes, get ready to listen to the rest of episode 235, part 2, if you will, of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, where we discuss all things boxing.
You want to go first, Daniel?
Okay, well, and we're back. Had a bit of technical delay on my end. Major technical issues. I had to stop things, and we're restarting things, and we're going to start again. Starting from the news, we're going to go again. Starting from the news. My apologies. I'll go to you, Daniel. At the end of 2018, you had all this discussion about Amir Khan and Kell Brook fighting, and it looked like a deal was going to happen. Negotiations happening. Eddie Hearn of Matchroom was in the midst of trying to make that fight, but then you hear 48 hours ago that Amir Khan has accepted a deal to fight Terence Crawford, $5 million guarantee. But you read behind the scenes, and I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Khan could have made a lot more money for a fight with Brook, but he instead chose the guarantee of $5 million to fight Crawford. I'll start with you, Daniel. Wise move, dumb mistake, head scratching, in my opinion. I'm still trying to figure this thing out here. Your thoughts?
Yes. To me, this is pretty much an admission of certain things. Because Khan may have all the confidence in the world, but I think he knows he's getting knocked out against Bud. I think this is pretty much an admission that he's willing to be knocked out by anybody as long as it's not Kell Brook. I don't know what it is about that rivalry. I don't know if it's particularly venomous in the UK. Well, considering some of the things that Khan has been spouting about Brook over the last month, yeah, it's pretty poisonous. But something about that rivalry, even when more money is on the table, now you can say, yeah, there's a world title in the picture, but we all know that this fight is going to probably wind up with Khan being knocked out again. So I think something about that rivalry with Kell Brook just makes it impossible for him to really, even at this stage where Brook really didn't look in this last fight, say, I'll lose to anybody, but I won't lose to you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Is he that petty, Khan, or is he that scared? Jacob.
I think we were talking about this before. I think Khan, in my opinion, has a little bit of delusion. I think that he thinks he can beat Crawford with his speed and staying away from Crawford.
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, touchdown!
Did they score?
Touchdown!
Yeah.
Oh!
That's game over.
I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to be excited. That's a 74 yards. That's a good touchdown right there. They're putting it on Alabama right now.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. My bad.
No worries. This only comes around one time a year, right? So, no, but what I was going to say is that I think Khan has a little bit of delusion in the sense that I think part of it is that I think he knows that he'll lose against Brook, regardless of the performance that Brook had, because he didn't have that great of a performance either in his last outing. He got knocked down. It went 12 rounds. But with Crawford, he's coming up in weight, right? And with Brook, he's a bigger guy. He would be coming down in weight. So I think he's more afraid of that, of being, beaten. And there might be a lot more at stake with the pride of just England in general, just over there. So there's that. And then I think because of his delusion, thinking that him beating Brook doesn't really, earns him, the battle of UK. But if he can beat Crawford, which I don't think he can do, not even close, but if he can beat Crawford, he'd be beating a guy who's undefeated, who's considered, pound for pound number one, or at least in the top three. And, it'd be like a big notch to put on his belt. So regardless of, he's still getting a lot of money. I think, was it $5 million you said? So, that's no chump change.
$5 million guarantee.
That's no chump change.
And the thing is, from from my research when I wrote about this for Three Kings, he has the potential. He can get all the pay-per-view revenues from the UK side, where in a fight with Brook, he would have to split it between Brook. But still, again, from my research, Khan could have made $10 million plus for a fight with Brook.
But he could still. But so again, let's say he fights Crawford, right? He loses, whatever, and gets knocked out. He loses. I think that Brook fight is still there. It's not like Brook is going to retire in the next year or so. And all it is Brook gets older and maybe, slower. He could still make money on that fight. So he picks up $5 million here, and then, maybe it's less money. Maybe he only gets, I don't know, $7 million, $8 million, but, that's two pretty good checks. But for me, Khan, I don't know. I don't think he deserves this fight with Crawford. I think he's like a Broner for me. He's getting these.
He doesn't.
Well, again, I think he gets the opportunities like a Broner does, like these second chances, because he hasn't done anything to warrant a shot at the belt or this name. But for Crawford, it is a name. It's a bigger name than Collazo. So I mean, people, Khan, like it or not, is recognized. And I was talking with Daniel earlier about maybe the other factor is that he's only been knocked out like cold against Canelo. And again, Crawford coming up in weight, Brook, a bigger guy moving down in weight. He might think that, I'm not chinny. I can still, take a shot. I can get knocked down and I can still win a fight like he did against Maidana. He didn't get clean knocked out against Garcia, So, I don't know. Like I said, I think there's a lot of delusion there. And he thinking that he can, like he was winning against Canelo, hey, if I can just not make a mistake, I can beat Crawford, but we all know he's going to make mistakes.
Of course he is. Follow-up question to you, Jacob, and you can respond as well, Daniel. In the midst of all this, I found out that Bud Crawford and Aram's first choice for a fight in April was against Danny Garcia. Offered him $3 million for the fight, and Team Garcia, Danny, Angel, and Danny decided to turn the fight down. Didn't return their phone calls. In light of all the, for lack of a better word, shit that Angel has talked about one Terence Bud Crawford, denouncing his skill, getting personal, calling him a nappy-headed so-and-so and so-and-so, basically trying to ghettoize and thug Crawford in terms of the depiction of him. What do you think of the fact that the opportunity was there to fight him, and they were basically like, nope? First you, Jacob, and then you, Daniel.
I think it's a chicken move. I mean, if you're claiming that your son, or even you yourself, are claiming that you're the best, that you should have won those fights, close decision losses, you deserve to win those fights, but then you have an opportunity to fight a pound for pound and champion in Crawford, and you turn it down. Like, I mean, that's only lends to him, his just the behind the scenes with Angel. I mean, Angel talks a bunch. I mean, that guy's an idiot. And I don't know. I wish he was out of the sport of boxing. I wish he was banned. But, I think Garcia knows, just like most of the other division knows, that Crawford is the goods, and he's going to, he's not going to lose. He's going to possibly get embarrassed.
Your reaction, Daniel, to the fact that an offer was given to Danny Garcia to fight one Terence Crawford, and they just basically turned it down. And from what, like I said, from my research on it, didn't even return the phone calls that Aram and Top Rank sent out to him.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised in the least, because this is the MO of Angel. He talks a lot of shit. But then when you have to put his son against a really tough fight, unless it's with a Heyman guy, he's not going to do it. And it's not like they're protecting an undefeated record anymore. He lost that to Thurman. So it's no longer about protecting the but I think it's just mainly admitting that they do not have as well-rounded of an overall game as they thought they would. Now, I've always said it was intense Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia is a fighter that does everything good, but he doesn't do one particular everything well. And that's what a lot of fighters, really good fighters, wind up trying to do. They, like I said, they do really good. They have good fundamentals, but they do one particular thing well, whether it's defense, whether it's punching, whether it's movement. Danny Garcia doesn't have that. He does everything good, though. Like, he has a well-rounded resume, but he just doesn't have that one thing that makes him stand out a lot more. And with Bud, it's his aggression. It's the fact that he can fight on both styles, both orthodox and southpaw. And in the end, that's probably what Angel sees. Not to mention, I think they fought at least twice in the amateurs.
Yes. And I think it was 1-1.
Yeah, that's what it is. Like, that's what it was. Like, they had 1-1. Danny won and one fight, and then Bud with the other one. So they both know each other pretty well, and they both can see how much they've improved. So that's probably is what's scary to them more than anything. And ultimately, I get it. I get it from a business standpoint, but I'm with Jacob in the sense of the fact that, Angel keeps writing checks for Danny that he can't cash. Sometimes it's good not to say things. Because when it comes back to you and you don't act up, it makes you look even worse.
And again, for me, okay, Khan, is he reaching for glory? Probably. But, excuse me, from a financial perspective alone, I just do not understand why he would turn down the opportunity to fight a Kell Brook, considering the money that was on the line. I mean, he could have made twice as much for a fight with Brook on home turf than he can for Crawford, because even though he has the ability to get most, if not all, of the pay-per-view money, who's to say there's going to be a significant audience that's going to buy UK pay-per-view for Khan, given what we know about him, given his issues with his chin. Is he the popular fighter now that he was 3, 4, 5 years ago? Do not know.
Actually, you can probably answer the question this way. Before the Wilder fight, would you think that people would buy, just UK, would buy Joshua Fury before the Wilder fight happened?
Would they buy it? I would think so.
Some would, because it's that popular in the UK. That's the thing. This fight is, like I said, Brook Khan, we know it's well past its expiration date at this point. But it's still a fight that I think a lot of British fans would probably like to see, because they want to settle that argument, who's actually better. And I don't know if it's that the fact that he doesn't want to have that question answered, that Khan's avoiding this at all costs. And I don't know if it's just the mere fact that maybe Al is telling him not to make Eddie Hearn that money. We don't know where it is when it comes into it, but it's just something about Kell Brook, this rivalry, that has Khan veering the other way whenever he gets a chance.
I mean, it's interesting because I just wonder how Eddie Hearn feels, given that he was attempting to make this fight and Khan was basically said no to him and no to Brook. So, I mean, he's taking the fight. Again, it's just a head scratcher to me. I'm going back to you, Daniel. A lot of talk in boxing media, both social media and regular boxing media, about one Gennady Golovkin. We had heard he was going to make a decision in terms of where he's going to go network-wise. We heard this decision was going to happen at the beginning of this year. It has not happened yet. Tom Loeffler of K2, over the past 6, 8, 10 hours, has been on a tweet storm going after any and everybody in the boxing media. He went after Dan Rayfield hard. He went after some other guys. And the reason for that was because presumably there's been some word that one Triple G has basically parted ways with Loeffler and K2 and kind of negotiating on his own. You're hearing stuff of a deal close to being made between Triple G and Al Heyman. Give us an update on that. And Jacob, you can give a follow-up commentary on what I'm hearing and what Daniel's about to report.
Okay, the best way for me to do it justice right now is for me to quote Tom Loeffler verbatim. It started, the tweet you saw, Dan Rayfield, when he was quote tweeting and responded saying that that Triple G is no longer with Loeffler. And as per quote of Tom Loeffler's Twitter account, Gennady Golovkin told me today that this is yellow journalism and not to say anything about him or his career without a direct quote from him or myself. Highly irresponsible to write something like this. People now using your tweet to write full articles based on false information. Then he went after Mike Coppinger. When Mike Coppinger saying reported that Triple G is going to make a decision after the birth of his kid, and it's going to be a decision between him and his family, what they want to do. And he said, Mike, stop your speculation on Gennady Golovkin's career. Wait for some news. Please don't reference Triple G's personal life on social media. He keeps his life and family and boxing life completely separate. Show him some respect and wait until we have something official to announce. And this is the one probably where he probably got mad at Ortega. Because Mark Ortega started comparing Triple G to Andre Ward. In the sense of how they're trying to get out of the promoters. He said, Mark, you're posting the same false information as other quote-unquote media. Monkey see, monkey do. Check your facts before posting or just call me. Ward lost 3 times when trying to break his contract with his promoter. TG Promoters will be happy to remind you.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so he's been on one. I think a lot of it has to do with this situation with a lot of criticisms that people have had overall in the way Tom Loeffler has handled Gennady, his overall career since coming into the States. I've been one of the people that has stated that Golovkin should have come to the States 2 to 3 years sooner and not have been held hostage by Felix Sturm for so long. The problem is, though, that didn't happen. And because of the way he was winning, Tom Loeffler did the best he could to win those fights. Now, you can criticize them for going after the money with Canelo when they were saying it's all about the belts, and they had chances to fight for all the belts. They chose money as this aspect to it. But a lot of it is also people want to blame somebody, and when it comes to a situation like this, when it doesn't turn out as good as they expected. And unless the fighter is an absolute idiot, like, Adrian Broner, you want to criticize then the team around him, and the easiest person to criticize at that point is a promoter. And that's, I think, what's happening here. And in reality, like I said, in his options, there's not a lot of options that are available. It depends all really what Golovkin wants to do. If Golovkin really wants to go after the belts once again, the only option is his own. If he's trying to cash out and get some quick fights, probably move up to 168, PBC is probably the better option. But this is more of to me, a lot of backwards history, where you're going back and you're blaming Loeffler for things that happened years ago, the way Golovkin was matched up years ago, and not realizing that at the time, Golovkin was one of the most feared fighters in the division. We have to remind people how Lou DiBella flat out said, I will never put Gennady Golovkin in the same ring with Sergio Martinez. He flat out said, I will never put those two in the ring together, but I recognize that Golovkin is next.
But here's the question, though, Jacob. First respond to what you just heard from Daniel. But here's the question. Coming off of the draw and the loss to Canelo, at age, he'll be, 37, 38 years old later on this year. Is Gennady Golovkin the commodity that he was, say, 2-3 years ago?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, I think it's going to be hard for him to get the money that he wants, if that's what his goal is, to cash out, because his shelf life it can't be that much. And if he's going to move to super middleweight, I think that he's actually he'd be a small super middleweight, and there's some dangerous fights there. I think that he can win a couple of them, but I think he could lose some of the bigger ones, and maybe even lose in devastating fashion. So, I'm just hearing of this news, from Daniel reporting it about everything that happens. And of course, hindsight's 2020. I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about this, to be honest, if Gennady Golovkin had knocked out Canelo or beaten him. We wouldn't even be having this conversation, because he'd be on top of the world. But, everybody knew that he wasn't going to get a decision against Canelo in Vegas. And, so, I mean, that's how it went. And, there were some questionable decisions made, and I'm not sure if it was Gennady or if it was Tom Loeffler, or a combination of both. But I have to imagine that Gennady has some input in this. But he didn't have to take step-aside money for when he was trying to do his goal of getting the championship and fighting Cotto. And then letting Canelo, do that. He could have forced the issue, but he took it twice, I believe. And then instead of going for all the belts like they said they were going to do, they went for the money. So, I mean, in a way, he has nobody to blame but himself. And it's easy to point fingers at Loeffler, I think, and say, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. But he did get 2 fights with Canelo. He did make a shitload of money. He did, he tried to put him on pay-per-view, and, that didn't go that well. But, I mean, he at least attempted. He got him deals with the HBO. His licensing, like just the Triple G moniker and all that stuff, has made him, a ton of money. I mean, he sold tons of shirts and hats and all that stuff. So, I mean, I think that Loeffler has done as best as he could. And if Golovkin was unhappy with some of these things, I mean, it's kind of, hey, that ship is already sailed. I mean, finish out the rest of your career, and I think he should retire. But I mean, he should have enough money, and I think he doesn't seem like a guy who spends. He's not like a Floyd Mayweather who's spending tons of money. But I don't know. I think he's at again. He's not the person that he was, to answer your question, and he should be happy for what he was able to accomplish. The title, I think he tied or broke the record for the successful middleweight defenses. He was a champion at one time. He was a popular fighter. He's no haggler. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But I mean, he had his time. But like all boxers, it's hard for them to walk away. So I don't know what he's going to do.
Your educated guess, Daniel, before we move on to preview what's happening this weekend. Do you think that Golovkin eventually signs with Heyman? Do you think he'll go another direction? And where do you see Loeffler's position in all of this?
To me, ultimately, he's probably going to stay with Loeffler. Like, there's really nothing he can do at this point. Like, you made your bed, you have to lie in it at a certain point. But I'll disagree with Jacob on one aspect. And the fact that he said, like, as a commodity, like, yeah, Golovkin is devalued as a fighter, as a commodity, because of his age. But what he brings in as a commodity is the fact that because of Loeffler, because of the way they've gone around and marketing themselves, they do have a pretty loyal and at times rabid fan base. And that speaks volumes because, yes, okay, Golovkin doesn't have the titles, but guess what? You're still going to have plenty of people that are going to go like Mexicans for Golovkin or buying Triple G shirts, like Jacob mentioned. There is a market for that. So it's valuable in the sense of the fact that you can sign somebody to it. But I will make a point, like I think me and Jacob talked about this while we were off air. It's regarding the way the super middleweights. It seems overall to me that Golovkin is perpetually chasing Canelo. Because he didn't start talking about Callum Smith until after the Zone made it as blatantly as possible that they were trying to entice that matchup between Canelo and Callum. So in a way, he's still chasing Canelo. And like I said, he has a fan base that wholeheartedly believes that he easily won both fights. Despite evidence to the contrary, and particularly in the second fight. The issue that's going to prevail into it, I think that will ultimately wind up lead him to the Zone. Because, like I mentioned, at 168, PBC is still a better option. You can fight Uzcategui, you can fight the Durrells. If he wins, you can fight James DeGale, but if you're going to fight for belts, and if you're going to stay at middleweight, the Zone's the only option. Because all 4 belts are with the Zone. And even, like I said, you can get the fight with Callum. Maybe you can get a fight like with George Groves. In that sense. There's some fights that can be made. It's just more of an option to do it with the Zone than you can do it with the PBC. So that's probably the thing where he's going to wind up. I do believe that Loeffler's he'll probably wind up sticking with Loeffler because he's done the most that they can do, and in all honesty, like I said, because he has a short shelf life, there's not much that other promoters can do because as big as Golovkin Saves Back is, his fan base, like I said, isn't as large as like example for Manny. Manny can get away with certain things because he not only has a fan base, he has an entire country behind him that rabidly is behind him. So that's my opinion when it comes into it.
Just to talk about real fast, to talk about the fan base, I think his fan base has dwindled a little bit though, because as proof of what they try to do at the StubHub to recover for that fight. I mean, they had affordable tickets at StubHub for his fight against Martirosyan, and that place was empty. I know it was last minute and whatnot, but still, I mean, the supposed fan base that he has, I think it's kind of gone away. And now with the Canelo getting the win, whether you agree with it or not, it still goes back in the books, and he doesn't have the belts. But I think he does have one more other choice or option where he can make some money, and that's a fight with Murata, because they can go to Japan. I think that's still a sellable fight, and they're both coming off losses.
Touchdown! Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, man. They're whooping on him right now.
Beautiful.
But yeah, I think that the Murata fight, I mean, because they're both coming off losses, I really don't think that I think since that loss to Golovkin, that really messed up the whole supposed for the belts thing. And he did enough defenses, and he was able to do enough historically that I think money right now is the main motivator. Is how can I retire with the most amount of money so I don't have to, I don't have to be one of those broke fighters that has to keep on coming back to boxing and getting my head in. I think that's really the case. That's what I believe, but who knows?
And like I said, I'm sorry. I said beforehand I was going to be distracted. 43-16, 43-16. Clemson leading Alabama right now in the third. Let's go on to.
It's only the third quarter too.
Yeah. Well, I'll say something to the Murata front first. Are you going to have Golovkin wait until after a rematch with Brandt before he fights Murata? Because that means he has to be off the shelf for close to 9 months.
He waited for Canelo. I mean, he was fighting 3 to 4 times a year, and then when the whole Canelo thing came, because it was money, he waited. So I mean, and again, he's older, and he can't. I don't think he can fight, 3-4 times a year anymore. So maybe waiting isn't a bad idea to get some money into Hill, and he's older.
Let's move on to. Let me calm down first of all. Let's move on to preview some fights. I want to focus on one fight in particular happening in LA, Fox Sports 1. I'm going to you, Jacob, because you're going to be live at the fight. Jose Uzcategui defending his IBF super middleweight title against Caleb Plant. Very. Look at this. I'm sorry, phone ringing in the background. Someone probably calling me about the game, but on paper, Jacob, like I said, you're going to be there. Rare Sunday fight, odd Sunday fight, taking it back old school 80s NBC and network television and whatnot. Your thoughts on this? Because I think this is going to be a real good fight.
I think it does have the makings of being a pretty decent fight. I don't know as much about Plant. I mean, I know he won against I think it's Porky Medina, and about a year ago, February of last year, and he's undefeated. He's got 10 KOs, but hopefully he can put up a good fight. But this overall card, like you mentioned, it's on Sunday, so that's a little bit weird for at least for me. All the fights I've been to have always been like Saturday or a Friday. But Uzcategui he didn't have the greatest performance his last time out. It was okay. But hopefully Plant brings it. And this card, I mean, there's a lot of fights on this card. Rigondeaux is going to be returning, so he's supposed to fight on that card. So it'll be nice to see him. I know that's an older Rigondeaux, but just to get a chance to see him. But hopefully there's some prospects also on the undercard that maybe that catch their eye.
Your thoughts on this fight, Daniel?
It's going to be an interesting fight because neither guys are known for explosive knockout power, but they're known for their skill. Uzcategui in particular, which the way how he handled, I think, Anthony Durrell in both of the times that they fought. So it's going to be a very interesting fight and a fun fight. And on the Sunday, that's pretty entertaining. I'm guessing the Chargers are playing on Saturday. That's probably the reason why they scheduled it that way. But it is going to be a fun fight while it lasts. Now, the only question I have when it comes to Rigo is he going back down to bantamweight?
I think this bout is going to be at featherweight. I think. And I think he's going to move up. I think he's going to move up to featherweight. I could be wrong though.
Hold on, I'm checking for you right now. It's going to be at super featherweight.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
That's what it's booked as. It's super featherweight against Delgado, and it's only an 8-rounder, is what it's showing here.
Because I could be wrong, but I thought I read a report that Rigo is going to be campaigning officially at featherweight during this comeback.
So he's just basically stepping away 2 weight classes past what he's good for. Of course. But then again, he's actually getting into a division that is pretty hot at the moment. And not to mention now, if he's with PBC, he does have an inside track then to fight Leo Santa Cruz. which is the fight I know this is another fight that's technically past its expiration date, but it's a fight that I would have loved to see when they had it at bantamweight, because it's two styles that can drastically affect one another. And if we get it at featherweight, I'm fine with that.
I'd rather see Leo Santa Cruz versus Warrington. I think that would just be an all-action, nonstop, crazy fight.
I agree in the sense of it's action. I just want to see what Santa Cruz does against somebody who defensively is going to try to prevent his motor from getting going. Because if you can do that, then you have a chance to beat him.
That would be hell. Santa Cruz and Warrington, they'll go the distance. They're not knocking each other out. There'll be nonstop action. That's fight of the year worthy. That's a good call.
I put that on my top 10 as I think is my second or third fight. I would love to see that fight.
Yeah, that's a really, because you hadn't heard anything from Gary Russell. Yeah,
that guy doesn't even want. That guy doesn't have to fight if he doesn't want to. That's the problem with Russel. Now
I think about it, that's a really good fight.
That's and like Warrington, the unmovable object going against the unstoppable force.
Yeah, and Warrington has expressed following the Frampton fight that he wants to come to the United States and fight. He wants to come to the United States to fight. So yeah,
we're at the Staples Center, man. It'll be freaking awesome.
Staples Center. Bring it to StubHub.
Well, not StubHub anymore. It's the Fidelity Health.
I refuse. I
will refuse to call it that. I will
exactly.
They've already changed it. The first, they already changed the signs.
No. StubHub. I'm gonna call it StubHub. No.
Well, you can go even further back and call it Home Depot. That's what it was originally called.
Yeah. Well, Jacob, we're gonna treat StubHub the way Portland Trailblazers fans treat the Rose Center. They don't call it the Mata Sleep Center. They call it the Rose Garden. That arena will forever be called that. That's pretty much what this is. It's going to be at the StubHub. But you know what? They're going to have a couple of fights in between because, Warrington is the IBF champion, and we know how they are about their mandatories, and he does have one coming up with Kid Galahad. So he might be stuck in the UK for one. So, like I said, if Rigondeaux looks good, give him like a tune-up fight with Santa Cruz while we wait for Santa Cruz for Warrington. I'm guessing Mike is checking the score again.
Is that it? Is he not?
And I'm back. I was saying that you mentioned the undercard. Any other fighters in particular that got you interested outside the Rigo fight on that Uzcategui plant undercard?
Yeah, the co-main event. It's got Brandon Figueroa, this featherweight fighting Moises Flores. So, yeah, hopefully that'll be decent. Most of the other fights are a lot of showcase fights, a lot of guys that are, just starting in their careers undefeated or maybe one loss, and they're fighting, a bunch of guys that, have a lot of fights but losing records. As we've talked about earlier, old Alan Green is fighting on that card, but, yeah.
Oh, like I said, he got to be 40 at this point.
He's 39. Yeah, he'll be 40 this year, and his last fight was was a year ago, and then before that was 5 years ago.
Oh, so, Jesus Christ!
So he's had a big gap. So
that's So basically, he's only fought twice in the last 6 years.
6 years, yes. And he lost one of
Jesus
them.
Christ.
Oh dear.
Jesus Christ. And
Oh,
somehow
and he's 39. And he's 39.
You know what? Somehow, even that's not as bad as Fresequendo's crap. I'll leave it at that.
He's fighting an Egyptian fighter
I'm
out of Miami.
I'm not even going there in terms of Kendo. I'm in a good mood. My Tigers are winning. I'm in a good mood. I'm not even going there.
He's fighting the guy Al Biali, who fought, who's only lost one time. He lost to Pascal in 2017 by TKO in the 6th round. So that's his most notable fight, But so Egyptian guy, but we'll see what happens. Maybe they knock each other's block off. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, I think we're going to start to shut down the show on that note. Crazy night. Again, technical issues on my end. I apologize for that. But still, like I said, I'm in a good mood because of what's happening in this national championship game. So I'm gonna get off and try to watch the end of that. Going around the panel here, starting with you, Daniel. Daniel from the Inscriber. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter at Ruckus99. Except I'm doing some stories now with the Inscriber about basketball, involving boxing, involving wrestling. I actually did a story on Kenny Omega yesterday. And like I said, I think Thursday I'm going to do my show with Joe and Francis for Boxing News. Like I said, we took a little bit of a break for the new year. We're not focusing on the fights. And excuse me, I need to dance because Snake Saban is getting his head mollywopped.
And they're gonna stop him on 4. Yeah, I'm sorry. Jacob from Jab Hook. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk movies, you also part of the kind of cast of the Wrong Real podcast. I subscribe to their show on SoundCloud. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for having me on the show. And R.I.P. to since you were talking about wrestling, Daniel, Gene Okerlund. Gene Okerlund.
Yeah.
He passed away recently, and
this weekend.
Yeah.
So R.I.P. to him, and but yeah, I can be found on Twitter at JRATM23 or at the fights. I'll be at the like I said, this Sunday, I'll be at the fight at the Microsoft Theater in LA. But also be at the fight, Gervonta Davis versus Mares at the StubHub in February, and check out my site, Jab Hook Boxing.
I believe you dropped an article either today or yesterday.
I did a couple. So one was a follow up to our award show. So I did an awards piece with honorable mentions, and then I had an individual that I guessed on their podcast. We kind of hooked up. He's from Wells era. Neil Gaskin. He's part of another film podcast that I was on recently, and we were talking about Die Hard for Christmas. But you could check that out. I'm on there, and we talk about that. But he did his awards for the end of 2018, and then I did a piece. Also, which I like to do every year is my top 10 fights I'd like to see in 2019. So you can go and check that out there. If you have any feedback or whatever, I'm going to try to be more active on my site and write more articles and hopefully get some help from some people. But if anybody's looking to write anything, hit me up on social media and we can talk.
I am Jipper Skipper right now. I am over the moon. What my Clemson Tigers are doing to Alabama, 44-16 in the fourth quarter. Like I said, I'm beyond ecstatic. If you like what you've heard this evening, please hit that like button on YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button. Also subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. I would also love to hear a review on iTunes. A good review will get read on the show. Even some positive feedback on SoundCloud, I will read it on the show.
Donations too.
Yeah, and donations. Thanks for that, Jacob. Jacob sent me a donation over the holidays. There's no better nation than donations. So yeah, you go to the Pound for Pound blog page. Check the Riley page. You will not only find um, links to where to find us on social media, as well as links to where to find the podcast on all platforms that carry podcasts, minus Spotify. You will also see a donate button there. So yeah, please again, let donation be the next nation, best nation. I don't care how much you send, $1, $2, $5, $10, $20, I'll take it all, because very few things are free, including the production of this podcast. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, we will do a recap of Uzcategui implants. We will also do a preview of Brian Jennings. He's returning to the ring, fighting Oscar Rivas on ESPN Plus. This fight is going to be happening in New York, Verona, New York. Shakur Stevenson is going to fight on the undercard. Also, we're going to do a preview of a DAZN card in NY. Demetrius Andrade returning to the ring to fight Artur Akavov, Jorge Linares, TJ Doheny, who, by the way, signed a deal with Matchroom, a promotional deal with Matchroom. He's going to be making the first defense of his IBF junior featherweight title on that card. And one of the best women pound-for-pound fighters in the world, Amanda Serrano, going down in the weight to fight for the junior bantamweight title. Also, Chris Algieri. So that's a loaded DAZN card. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Again, if you like what you heard, hit that like button on YouTube, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud as well. For Daniel of the Inscriber, Jacob from Jab Hook, this has been episode 235. I am your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone, have a good evening, good night. Now let me get to watching this end of this Clemson, Alabama game, because I am loving every second of what I'm seeing.
Congratulations, Mike.
Y'all have a good night. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, man.
ACC.
Indeed, indeed.